Hello again. I'm Peter Boyle, the host of today's Book Vodcast. The author of 9 Lives, a Spanker, a DNA Family, who was he? My children wanted to know because he was a stranger to them for many, many years before they were born. I had never experienced being in the presence of 5 corpses on display. They were laid out side by side, young men dead. Their intestines were on display along with dismembered limbs and faces blown off. I lingered long enough to take pictures of this byproduct of the Vietnam War. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to meet the author. On the other hand, sometimes you don't, and today you can save your vote till after you see today's Book Vodcast number 4. This, by the way, is the 4th in our series of 6 book vodcasts. Were it not for our children's request, wanting to know who that stranger was, did he actually do anything that was exciting and memorable? Well, many questions were asked, and some of them answered with tongue-in-cheek, just the way I have always lived my life. The following are some of the questions that were asked, and keep in mind that the answers to all of the questions are actually in the book. Hey, have you ever been to Thailand? How about a prisoner of war camp high in the Sierra Nevada mountains? Did you ever get kicked off your high school basketball team because you were too old? Have you ever had 9 near-death experiences? For those of you who have reached the age of 60, did you ever receive a call from a detective who has a client that says his father is your father? Have you ever felt the rollers of a Wringer washing machine climbing up your arm and lifting your feet off the floor? I bet you never have ridden in a car with mounted signs on it that say in big red letters, "Communicable Disease Investigator." Boot camp was fun. Remember? Who fell 30 feet out of a tree and walked away? Did the police arrest you after you broke into the jewelry store? Did you ever go to sleep and wish to wake up in a dream house? Do you know any veteran who spent 2 years in Vietnam and love it? I was being buried alive. Won't you come and join my experience? Were your children at your wedding? Stay with me now while I answer some of the questions verbatim from the text in the book. Do you know any veteran who spent 2 years in Vietnam and love it? And yes, we also did some work for the much appreciated People to People projects while we were there. We knew ahead of time that a storm had destroyed a bridge that joined a populated island to the mainland, and people had to either wait for low tide or find a boat that would get them back and forth from their homes on the island. The changing of the tides brought about very swift tides between the 2 pieces of land, and that limited our time to work at the site. So we had to improvise and build the trusses back at our base and haul them out to the site and install them one by one. We had 2 crews on the project, one for installing the footings and abutments, and the other crew to build and install the trusses. They were Queen Anne's trusses, installed with the vertical leg pointing downward. J.G. Jack Buffington did the math and the design to come up with the size of the timbers to make the bridge withstand the tide's swift moments. Jack was a good guy and became admiral later on in his career and he became the director of the Seabees worldwide. When we finished the project, the people were so thankful that they invited us as guests of honor to a luncheon. As was the custom at the time, you accepted the offer and ate what they served. We did what was expected of us, and later our interpreter told us that part of the luncheon that was served to us contained rat and dog meat. It's a good thing they didn't tell us anyway, because nobody knew the difference. As peaceful as Phan Rang was, we were reminded of the stark reality that surrounded us by the local Vietnamese army. And the Vietnamese army presence was visible everywhere we went. The word was out to them from the village chieftains to provide protection for the Seabees, and thanks for building the bridge. We enjoyed the Vietnamese hospitality while we spent time with them building their bridge, the very new bridge. One of the questions was, well, hey, have you ever been to Thailand? Yes, we were in Bangkok on leave from Vietnam. There was no sense of fear while traveling there because the VC was leaving Thailand unscathed, while it took its wrath out on the Americans in Vietnam. The military stay in Vietnam was precarious, interesting, and satisfying. When you had the opportunity and you had some cash, it was possible to go out of the country and take a break away from the look over your shoulder feeling. A buddy and I were able to take a trip to Bangkok, the capital city of Thailand. Thailand was abutting Vietnam on its border, and the VC entered Vietnam from a corridor they had carved out in Thailand. There was little or no threat from the VC if you were visiting Thailand. It must have been a courtesy given by the VC to the American GI. Maybe, maybe not. But not to worry, no VC while vacationing in Bangkok. And take a look at the pictures I snapped in Bangkok some 60 years previous to this 2022 date. I take them out frequently to revisit the amazement I was able to experience back then. All of the ancient architecture was an eyeful. It is colorful, reflective, and unique. Yes, they had contemporary buildings which were lovely, but your eyes were always captured by the next building or garden yet to be seen around the corner. I have always remembered the friendliness of the Thais. Part of my conversations to others today still speaks of the feelings that I felt safe around the Thais. I tell the story that if I ever became disabled in Bangkok, I felt good in knowing that a Thai would help me up, take out my wallet, use my money to pay and call a taxi, put me in the cab with my wallet, and send me back to the hotel as a gesture to the Americans. It was a nice feeling to have for a country you had never been to before. Another gesture the Thais provided for the weary was their appreciation for comfort. The Thais were very discreet and unapologetic for some of the services they provided for the American GI. One of the memorable occasions we had in Bangkok was on the outskirts of the city. After we had dinner one evening, one of the guys in our group decided to share one of his secrets. The secret was of the ladies living in housing on the outskirts of Bangkok. The landscape was not only on the outside of the structure, but also flowing in, around, and through the buildings. The building design allowed for it, and yet it somehow provided shelter from the sun and the rain. Flowers were abundant, birds were chirping, and a faint background big band of romantic music was floating in the air. There were floor-to-ceiling shutters open to the balconies and courtyards beyond. Light, very light, flowing drapes provided any privacy warranted. It all sounds a bit like you'd want heaven to be, and it was. The location was in a place much akin to my vision of Shangri-La. The question was, were your children at your wedding? And the answer was yes. We were married at St. Paul's Church in Hingham on 14 October 1979. And greeting us as we climbed the stairs to the church was Dutch, and his video camera. The importance of capturing this moment was great. I have watched it several times over the years, and I still smile every time. Some of the folks in the video, including Dutch, are no longer with us, but how nice it is to visit a moment so long ago, as though everyone was still with us and enjoying the wedding. To date, we have made over 700 videos. Over 235 have been made into projects through a software called Pinnacle Studio. They are up on YouTube, including our wedding video, for all to see for a long, long time. It was 43 years ago from this date, 2022, that we were on our way from the church to Hugo's restaurant on the harbor in Cohasset. Get out your clicker. Listen to the voices. Hear the music. See your friends without any gray hair. My parents dancing. Hug your loved ones again and see the love and laughter of my Nancy.
Who do we love most of all in the whole room? Peter! Who do we thank for this wonderful day? Peter! Who do we wish long lives and happiness? Peter! Now, who are we going to drink to?
The question was, when was the last time you were in a prisoner of war camp high in the Sierra Nevada mountains? The real test of a CB team came just before you were sent to Vietnam. Vietnam, hot and sweaty, please meet the Sierra Nevada mountains here in the United States. Very cold and snowy. Why were we sent 11,000 feet up into the snow as a test to see if we could make it in Vietnam is to this day an unanswered question. We were lucky as a team. The week before they sent us on the escape and evasion course in the Sierra Nevada mountains, a CB died during one of the events he had to endure while taking this course. The temperature was just above freezing. He was put on the cross, and after being hosed down with water, he was put in the box to test his endurance, to see how long it would be before he yelled uncle. He never yelled uncle. When they opened the box, he was dead. The box was not level. His head was lower than his feet. He died of pneumonia. He drowned in his own fluids. We had a tour of that camp knowing we did not have to go through the torture and interrogations. One of the simulated torture items that prior CBs endured features a two-man torture at the same time. There was a hole in the ground into which they placed a couple of 55-gallon drums on top of each other. They backfilled around the barrels so that all you could see from above was an empty dark hole. They chose the two men who would be next in line for the test by watching the men to see which men were buddies with each other. Then they would become prime candidates for this experiment. The shortest man was the first man they would put into the barrel, close over the rebar grid, and slowly began to fill the hole with water as they were asking the man standing outside the hole the needed questions. After a while, they pulled the short man out of the hole and had the taller man jump in. He had to stand on his tiptoes to breathe. Then they stood the shorter man on his shoulders and asked the shorter man questions. The men usually gave them answers they were looking for. There were many other torture techniques spread throughout the camp, which thankfully we did not have to endure. We were issued thermal sleeping bags and snowshoes. The temperature on average in the middle of the night was 10 degrees below zero. We were also issued a full canteen of drinkable water. No food was issued. They gave us a parachute and an axe. We were told there were lots of small critters we could ensnare for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. On our first day, we trekked upward and outward into the mountains. We had maps and compasses to aid in our navigation. The end designation was noted on the map. It was 25 miles from the starting point, and we needed to be there in 3 days, or else. We weren't told of the or else consequences. The wind was kicking up and the sun was going down. We worked as fast as we could to gather as many pine boughs as we could. We picked a spot in the middle of 3 tall pines with low overhanging branches to bed down. With the branches we had harvested from the surrounding trees, we were able to build a bed of pine boughs to a thickness of about 18 inches. We stretched the parachute around the 3 trees and fastened the loose end at the opposite direction of the wind direction. We left a small opening to pass through, but there was no overhead protection against any potential snowfall. The enemy would not harass us on the first night, we were told. We piled high the dead wood with a fire just outside the parachute's surround. It was 6 feet high and 10 feet wide. The fire was lit as we spread our sleeping bags close to one another. You made sure you took your boots into the sleeping bag with you. You would welcome warm boots in the morning. The pine boughs were compressed to about 12 inches deep with the weight of CBs on top of them. You could only see about 6 inches of exposed faces sticking out of the bags. It was cozy. The snoring started. It was 10 degrees below zero. We awoke early in the a.m. and the fire was gone. It had disappeared. We could see the smoke arising from the hole in the ground. If you stood next to the hole, you could feel some of the heat still arising from the embers 6 feet below where the fire started the night before. The enemy had snowshoes and skis. They were the Red Army. You can tell by the red stars they had affixed to their uniforms. They all forgot how to speak English for this escape and evasion course, so communication with them would be a problem should we get caught. They had the coordinates of the course we were supposed to take to get to the finish line. That fact let them know where to set their ambushes along the way. The guys on the team that wanted to follow the rules were ambushed, pants pulled down, and snow pushed up their ass. The rest of us took a more circuitous route and enjoyed the view from up above, as those members of our team learned an old trick. We regrouped and got together for dinner, but there was no food. We were hungry. We spread out, and we heard someone yell. One of the team members had chased a chipmunk up a tree in the middle of a clearing. We had him surrounded, and we had 24 snowshoes to beat him with as soon as he came down out of the tree. He wouldn't come down, so we had to go up. We sent one of our more lithe and limber team members up the tree to shake him down. He climbed after the chipmunk up to within 10 feet of the top of the tree when the chipmunk finally jumped. That move made the circus of CBs come alive. If we only had a camera to catch the image of 11 grown men dashing about the field in snowshoes, chasing after that poor son of a bitch of a creature with one snowshoe raised high and yelling as loud as they could. It was a sight for all to see. I'm going to search my photos to see if I can find the photo that tells the conclusion of this episode. The picture was of a grown, grinning man holding a number 10 tin can, 20 ounces, with one hand, and on the other hand was the poor chipmunk, impaled upon a stake, ready to be roasted for a team of 12 hungry men. We immersed the chipmunk into the number 10 can, which was filled with water, and then we did in fact cook the chipmunk over an open fire. The first and last time I ever had chipmunk stew. We finished our journey and passed the escape and evasion test. It still baffled us as to how the snow at 12,000 feet figured into the equation for getting us to Vietnam.